there's a growing field known as quantum biology, which really looks at how vibrations and tiny, tiny, tiny things make everything happen in the body. And so we're starting to understand it a lot more. So when you're talking about bioenergetics, you're really taking that concept of saying, hey, chemistry is important. We need the right nutrients in our body. And sometimes we might even need a medical drug to suppress something for emergency purposes. But when you're trying to get down as close to the very physical foundation of everything, you need to get into the energy of the body. And so dealing with the body through vibration, through sound, through light, through magnetic fields, and so on, this is what bioenergetics is doing. It's attempting to use vibrations to target things more carefully, to really create fewer and safer side effects, more like healing responses rather than any sort of long-term side effect. So that's really what we're talking about, is moving from just a chemistry-based approach, which is useful, but now complementing that with the importance of the body at its energetic basis.
Welcome to Harmonic Alignment,
a podcast that explores the new frontier of energy medicine,
bridging the gap between Western medicine and quantum physics,
giving you easy and practical solutions.
Guided by
me, Dr. Larisa Sharipova,
and me, Priscilla Koblenz. Join us on a journey discovering your harmonic alignment. On today's episode of Harmonic Alignment, Dr. Larisa Sharipova connects with Steve McCardell. Steve has been a bioenergetic health practitioner since 2007. He co-founded a private health practice in Michigan and has had a successful career as a writer and a teacher. Combined with his role, he is now the head of education for Energy for Life, formerly Ness Health. Steve has written and taught extensively on health and wellness, and he is the co-author of the book, Restore Your Energy with Bioenergetics. Both Dr. Larisa and myself are bioenergetic practitioners with Energy for Life. We are so excited to have Steve on today to explain to us the things that we try to articulate to our clients, how energy really is the driving factor in your health. Enjoy.
Welcome to Harmonic Alignment Podcast. I'm very excited and honored to have Steve McCardell, Head of Education for Energy for Life. Steve, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about our conversation here.
I have been bioenergetic practitioner and use Energy for Life technology for the last 3 years. It's changed my health, my personal and professional life. I was so pleased that Steve agreed to come to the show and talk about bioenergetic principles, Energy for Life technology, and future of energy medicine. So I really appreciate it, Steve. So before we dive into all that, I would like to know what inspired you to change your career as a writer and teacher and take a path into bioenergetics and natural health. What's your story?
Well, that takes us back a few years, Dr. Larissa. So my wife and I were in a position many years ago to open a clinic of our own. And the interest in that was driven by the fact of having kids. So I think a lot of people probably have gone through that experience where as soon as they have children, they're really looking at what does it mean to raise a healthy child. And I had, really dating back to my college years, I had already been growing an interest in things like organic food and herbs and things like that long before, Whole Foods was a thing. So that interest just kept growing. And when we started to have our own children, that interest really grew. And we were in a position where we were able to open a clinic of our own. And we had been exposed to some other forms of bioenergetics. So we had had some assessments done and had seen some really exceptional results, even for our oldest son. So that really grew our interest, and we started to explore light therapy, sound therapy, various forms of assessments. And we really started to get familiar with that territory. Now, we didn't end up having our own practice for a long time because in reality, we opened it just before the Great Recession, and we hadn't built up a clientele that could take us through that, number one. Number two, everything was done in person at that time. And so we had to be reliant just on the community around us. Everything has shifted now. Now you can actually work remotely with a bioenergetic practitioner. It changes the scope of everything. But we continued to stay engaged with the natural and alternative health communities for many years until about a little over 7 years ago. I was looking for a career change and contacted Energy for Life. At the time, they were called miHealth, contacted them, and here we are today.
It's interesting story. So your wife is a practitioner?
Yes, she does a few different things, but she was also certified in bioenergetics more than 10 years ago now.
Okay, so speaking about bioenergetic, for listeners who might not know the term or new to the bioenergetics, how would you describe it in simple terms and why it's such a powerful approach to health?
If you're looking at nutrition or modern medicine, the traditional ways that we get well right now or deal with disease through conventional medicine, it's all based on the body's chemistry, or mostly. We do some things that are energy based or physics based, like X-rays, MRIs, things that involve electromagnetic fields, things that involve resonance and vibrations. But most of our solutions boil down to chemistry. And so we provide a medical drug to suppress a chemical reaction, or we eat a certain food or take a supplement to provide certain chemical building blocks. And that's important. You can't build a house with an idea only. You need bricks, you need plumbing, right? But you also need the blueprint. You need to know what to do with everything. And when you start to get down into the physics of the body, the energy of the body, we know that number one, you need enough energy to make things happen. And you need then what we refer to as information or a blueprint to show how that energy needs to be used, how chemical actions have to take place in the body. And so this is a fairly new idea. The idea goes back a long time, but as far as science being able to validate what's happening, it's very difficult going below the level of molecules down into atoms and protons and electrons and the crazy things that you hear about in physics classes when you're learning about energy. However, with the advent of computers and just technology continuing to take us smaller and smaller and smaller, there's a growing field known as quantum biology, which really looks at how vibrations and tiny, tiny, tiny things make everything happen in the body. And so we're starting to understand it a lot more. So when you're talking about bioenergetics, you're really taking that concept of saying, hey, chemistry is important. We need the right nutrients in our body. And sometimes we might even need a medical drug to suppress something for emergency purposes. But when you're trying to get down as close to the very physical foundation of everything, you need to get into the energy of the body. And so dealing with the body through vibration, through sound, through light, through magnetic fields, and so on, this is what bioenergetics is doing. It's attempting to use vibrations to target things more carefully, to really create fewer and safer side effects, more like healing responses rather than any sort of long-term side effect. So that's really what we're talking about, is moving from just a chemistry-based approach, which is useful, but now complementing that with the importance of the body at its energetic basis.
I also describe it, it's a part of quantum biology, and recently we separate quantum physics from biology, and now with all the technology we can detect the energy, the light in the body, and that's why we now combine quantum physics and biology, which is quantum biology.
Absolutely right, yes.
Can you tell us more about what's an Energy for Life and what's its entail, what's in it technology?
So Energy for Life has three primary components today. One is an assessment, a software-based assessment. One is really these liquid remedies that we call Infoceuticals, that the software guides you towards which ones are optimal for somebody in order to get the best results or to make the most progress in terms of health and vitality. And then, as I know you've talked about elsewhere, the miHealth technology, which is a bioelectric technology, a handheld device that somebody can use either near the body or directly on the body to support health. And again, the software assessment can help direct somebody towards the best use of that as well. So the software is based on a theory of what we call the human body field, or some people simply call the biofield. Every time you have energy movement, you're producing a field. And so you can imagine there are absolutely minuscule fields around every atom. And as atoms come together in molecules, they produce a field, and molecules develop proteins that develop cells, that develop organs, that develop our whole body. So everything in us is producing fields, and collectively they produce what we call a single human body field. But that one body field is that collection, and therefore within it, you have vibrations of the brain and the liver and the kidneys and all these different parts of the body. Not only that, you have information going on within that field about how well powered is an organ, how well is information or communication taking place in the body. You can look at communication from the standpoint of everyday operations, like the beating of the heart, versus healing responses in the body and its defense mechanisms against pathogens. So it's a lot of different components happening. What I feel is really exciting about our particular system is it looks at how the energy system of the body is altered through emotional impacts as well. So people talk about the impact of emotions on health, and the reason is because it actually disrupts the energy of the body. So if you have something that is not processed, an emotion that is not processed, that's going to be either long-term stress, it just became too much over time to process, or a sudden event, a shock or trauma that was very strong and sudden. And we don't fully process those, they live in us. And a lot of people, they'll notice patterns in their lives. Why do I keep attracting this sort of person or this sort of event, this sort of experience in my life? Why can't I stop eating this or that? We have patterns built into us. They are physically us until we clear them out, right? So taking all of that into account is what I love about our particular software. It's looking at all these different aspects of the body field. And so when you are looking at this sort of software assessment, which is very easily done, somebody simply speaks into a microphone for about 10 seconds because of the vibrations of the voice. That vibration is actually carrying all the information of what's going on in the body. Historically, people have thought, that's incredible, that can't be. But the reality is right now they are starting to use AI to do the same thing, to hear the voice and say, we think this is going on with the body. AI is a pattern recognition system. Well, we are not using AI like that, but we are using basically a pattern recognition system of saying, hey, we know that the optimal body field is like this. And when we're reading your voice, we're seeing maybe a distortion here and a distortion here, and we can see the areas that need the best help. And so within the software, you're able to see different screens that represent these different aspects of the body field. How well is it interacting with its environment, including the fields that are generated by the Earth itself? We know that Earth has a magnetic field. We know that all these things are going on. So we're looking at your environment. We're looking at how well powered the body is, how well communication is taking place. All these things that we've talked about are looked at, including energetic relationships to toxins and nutrients. There's just a lot of information packed in, which someone like you is able to then turn around and say, hey, we've got some deep insights into what's going on for you. One thing we'd love to emphasize is it's not about diagnosing a disease. It's really about finding out where the body is looking for support, because the body already has this incredible ability to heal itself, to stay healthy, to be vibrant, but it needs the right support. Sometimes that's nutrients, sometimes that's a supplement or something, and sometimes it is clearing out an energetic blockage, providing more energy. These are the types of things that we look at when we're looking at this type of scan or assessment.
And sometimes clients get overwhelmed with a lot of information. And that's why I think it's important to have a practitioner to interpret the scan. How does it look like specifically for you at this point in life? Experience anything physical or mental or spiritual going on right now. So scan is going to show, or at least pinpoint where support needed. I like to use it when I have like complicated cases, and sometimes you don't know where to start and give your priority or where concentrate at this point in time.
You're absolutely right. And if you think about this on more the medical side, you might get blood results, you might get whatever type of lab report, and it might have a lot of numbers and words on it that, a layperson who has not studied it is going to look at it and say, well, I'm sure this is interesting, but I don't really know where to begin. And what a doctor is going to be able to do is say, hey, look, these are the important readings on this chart. And now all of a sudden it becomes more personal and understandable by the patient. Well, in the same way, you're right. There is so much information packed into this that a good practitioner like yourself is able to look in on this and say, what are the relevant things that I need to share with my client? How can I help them to understand how this relates to what's going on for them without getting them overwhelmed? So that's a beautiful way to do that, especially as you said, at some of those more complicated cases where you're saying there must be something else going on underneath all of this that we're not quite catching. Let's go see what that is.
You've been a practitioner with Energy for Life for many years. So maybe you can share a specific case study or particular story that you have with your clients in the past now to illustrate how the system works and how you can give support to somebody.
I always like to set people's expectations correctly. And I think what I have found over the years, before I share a short anecdote, is that there are instances where within minutes or hours, somebody is seeing a profound result. And they're like blown away by the power of what we can do when you start to change the energetic body. So absolutely, I've seen a person, for example, where we didn't even scan them. It was just a friend who was over, who she had like a year of stress built up from a new business. And she was to the point where she couldn't keep food down. So she was over just visiting, but we weren't going to go and do a full session. But I said, look, here's what we call stomach driver. Here's some stomach driver. I don't know this is the best thing for you, but just take some and let's see if it's something. She was able to keep food down that night. And so we know the power of that, but we also know that sometimes people have gotten sick over years and years and years, and it takes more time for them to start seeing results. Or maybe they're expecting this result. They come to you to see this specific result, but in fact, what happens is the first thing that happens is they start sleeping more, or sleeping more deeply or more easily, or an emotional shift occurs, or a headache goes away. People forget how everything is tied together, and it may take time to get to what they're looking for, right? So as I say this, I just want to couch this in the terms of, I really think anything is possible when you get down to this level. But I know this is going to sound incredible when I say this. But I had someone who had MS coming in to see me, and she had MS, I want to say for 10 years, but it was at least for several years. And she'd been on a walker for the past 1 year. This was long enough ago, I couldn't tell you exactly what the reading was, but I'm confident that something came up around the nervous system. I just don't remember if it was specifically what we call nerve driver or some other aspect of the nervous system. But we provided her with her protocol, and we set up an appointment for the following month. And she came back in a month later, and I hadn't heard from her the entire time. I said, so how were you doing over the last month? And she said, well, after 1 week, I found that I was walking without my walker. You were walking without your walker, and you didn't call me to tell you. I was shocked, because I knew that a lot was possible, but I didn't know that was possible at the time. This was early in my career.
And that fast.
Now, one of the things that I always like to point out to people is what happened is she was walking without her walker for about 2 weeks. and then went back onto the walker. And it's actually a great representation of how, when people start working with you, they're going to see this process. Sometimes things are feeling worse before they get better. And then sometimes something is feeling great and then it retreats, because healing is this process. It's not like this sudden moment, oh, I've just become healed, right? The body is often cleansing itself, having to go through emotional detox, but as well as physical detox. If the nervous system has been breaking down for years and years, you're going to have these spikes of all of a sudden new connections being made, but you still have, for example, myelin sheath that protects the nerves, having to rebuild potentially. There's all sorts of things that are going on with the body. And so that was a great example of how quickly things can occur, even sometimes when you don't think progress is possible, but there is really this ongoing process. And I will say that was one of the early instances that showed me, from my experience, if I were to say of all the things I worked with, I felt the nervous system responds really, really well to bioenergetics. And so anytime I'm trying to assist somebody with anything going on with the nervous system, I actually feel a lot of hope around that. So again, we never make a promise about what an outcome, but I'm always really hopeful with that because I feel it's very responsive. And of course, the nervous system is tied into so many other things, digestion, the heart, like it's all connected. So.
And it's already electric, right? We know that electricity and magnetism is mostly based on nervous system. And when we give the body what body needs and remove from the body what doesn't need, body heal itself. We don't heal people. People heal themselves. We just provide the support with the technology, Infoceuticals, miHealth, and some other lifestyle and nutrition support. So everything affected the energy in the body.
And exactly like the nervous system. So when we talk about bioenergetics, we actually talk about resonance. That is frequencies that match each other. And so in our view, the body actually has a wireless communication process. And everybody today is familiar with that. They use cell phones, they use Wi-Fi, they understand that technology communicates wirelessly. Our body actually does the same thing. But that doesn't undo the fact that it's also sending signals through the nervous system and through chemicals as well, through hormones and things like that. And so all of these, the body is, again, very holistic. It's got a lot of backup systems. It works in different ways that are all complementing one another. And so when you think about that response of the nervous system, we're not only, just helping with the nervous system, we're helping with all the things it helps with, which is everything. So yeah, I think when you look at it that way and say, yeah, that electrical nervous system, we can't overstate its importance.
And before we believe that you cannot regenerate nervous system, right? Whatever you lose it, you cannot get it back. And now we know that there is neuroplasticity and a lot of science behind it, that we know you can regenerate even lost cells. So everything is possible. And talking about possibility, what role do mindset and belief play in energy healing in your experience?
Well, we can broaden that a bit. We know that mindset affects all healing and disease as well. It's why literally every medical trial, they've got to have the placebo effect taken into account. So you think you're getting the pill, but you're not really, and you get better. Well, the same thing can happen in the reverse, where you think you're going to get sick and you do, or you think something won't help you and it won't. So what we like to point out is whether you're using bioenergetics or supplements or medicine, whatever you are doing to get better, your mind plays a role in it. And some people are doubtful enough about energetic approaches to wellness. They think, oh, it's all placebo. And I kind of laugh about that because we actually have a lot of practitioners who work with animals. There's no placebo there, and the animal gets well. Work with children who have no idea that they're taking something. And so I know that placebo is not driving the results we get, but I know that placebo drives all results further than they would without. And so mindset, it's a really big thing, but also I like to add something to that, because when we think of mindset, we think of our thoughts up here in the brain. And I have my personal theory, which actually merges really well with the body field theory. The body field theory, even though there's one body field and there's trillions of individual cell fields, Peter Fraser, who really helped to develop this overall theory, he talked about three primary fields making up the body field. And they are associated in my philosophy with the three brains of the body. We have the gut brain, which a lot of people talk about these days, the brain in the gut. There's a nervous system there as well, and there's a nervous system in the heart, which I consider the other brain. And so all of these are generating fields, and all of these, I believe, have forms of our consciousness. And we think about our consciousness up here because it takes place in words or whatever, but we have reactions in our gut and we have reactions in our hearts. And to be honest, I think the heart set is what I would call, we have a mindset, we have a gut set, we have a heart set, if you want to say it in that way. And I think all of them are really important. When we're in a state of fear, which would be more the gut, then this plays out in a lot of ways of making us ill. When we are desirous, or I don't have enough of that victim mentality, a lot of the broken thoughts, they cause these disorders in our bodies. And when we are feeling unloved, unlovable, whatever, right in here, these cause disorders. So it's really that collective of our mindset, heart set, gut set, that I think is really important, and that, again, really gets captured, I think, in our system really well.
And it comes back again to emotions, negative or positive emotions. So if you feel that you're unlovable, so that creates negative energy on a scale of emotion, conscious of emotions. Is like negative, it's on a low, right? Create low energy. Yes. And the love and joy, it's on a high scale. So it creates positive and high emotion, high energy. So that's how affecting our body in our body field.
It's absolutely true. And, you know, we're at this good place in our world where we're starting to recognize that more and more, because for a long time, emotions were not really brought into the medical model. Oh, that's just nonsense. You know, you don't have to pay attention to that. And now it's become much, much more mainstream to understand the real impact of those things. But I think even today, it's really more the natural health and alternative health communities that say, yep, but modern medicine, it's still even more than you think it is. Like, it's really, really impactful, maybe foundational.
I'm glad that now we're talking more and more about trauma, specifically childhood trauma, and how it's affects our manifestation of physical diseases and how it's affects our lives. So now at least integrative medical community or integrative mental practitioners talking about trauma and healing trauma, transgenerational trauma, I believe in that as well. We need to work with the emotional energy so our system can help with that as well. Another part of Energy for Life system, it's a specific meditation that is based on emotional scan, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is actually a lesser known part of the system, partly because it's newer, but also because
I love it.
Yes, so many people are still in the mindset of, let me just take something in my mouth and let it heal me, like it's going to do the job of just healing me, and I don't have to do anything else besides that, right? It's especially a Western mindset of speed to whatever. The idea of sitting down and personal development, a lot of us are resistant to that. But again, for the same reason that this emotional stuff is so impactful on us, addressing it is so impactful in a positive way. What we developed just a couple of years ago is we do have ways of tapping into the resonance of different emotions in the body and different personal development processes when you're working towards courage or you're struggling in a state of fear, as an example. So there's sort of a vibrational state that we're able to match to assess that this is something that you're inside, you're wanting to work on right now. And the beauty of assessing the body field, which is where all of the subconscious realities live. They're not up here. This is your conscious reality, but your body stores everything in that field. And so when it's saying, hey, you're struggling with a fear and you're ready to work on courage, you should be taking that seriously, because on a very deep level, that is true. And it's time to start bringing to consciousness, where might that be true in my life? Some people will recognize it immediately, but some might have to look around and say, where am I struggling with this theme in my life? And so we're able to make an assessment around that within the system. And what we did a couple of years ago is we then took that idea and said, well, since we know the optimal vibration in relation to courage, and we can see when they're not there, therefore they need to correct it, we can provide that frequency to support that process, that inner journey of theirs. And so what we did is we took the top issues that they're dealing with at the subconscious level. We not only are able to reflect that to them and say, hey, here are the things that could be worked on, but we then built out a meditation, a recorded meditation, a guided meditation. It's about 15 to 20 minutes long, but it is personalized to their scan. So everybody's meditation ends up coming out different, unique to their scan and their needs. So now it's going to consciously walk them through a meditation that assists them with moving through those ideas, those themes, but carried on the sound waves of the meditation itself, we give our corrective information. So as they're listening to, hey, now we're going to talk about the theme of courage and walking through that, we actually give the frequency that will help them to do it. Because it's one thing to consciously, even in a meditative state, to consciously try to work on that theme. It's another when you're actually introducing to the body field the corrective vibrations, because that is what helps to just cleanse that out. So it's this dual conscious and subconscious therapy that's happening at once. That's why I really love it, because I'm not aware of anything else like it in the world right now.
And we know that music delivers vibration, and it's healing. It's sound healing through the music, through the voice. So we using here many different technology at once to deliver the frequencies.
Sound is really, really powerful. It's very impactful because it relies on the physical movement of the air or of the body. So when you introduce sound into the body, it's moving through fluids and solids, which makes it that much more impactful. And if you can introduce coherent, beautiful sounds into the body, very, very powerful method.
I use it. I listen at night when I go to bed. I just put headsets and it's deliver frequency that I needed for that period of my life and working on subconscious different things. So amazing technology. I love it. I recommend to my clients. My children's using it. So you and head of education for Energy for Life, what do you believe people must need to understand about body's energy system and self-healing potential?
There's a difference between what the client needs to understand and what a practitioner goes into. So, when we get into practice, we start talking about a lot of the science behind it to help practitioners understand. And that really goes beyond what a client needs to understand. But what I think is useful maybe to know is how much science there is around it, because I feel like, going back to the mindset concept, a lot of people intuitively grasp that this sort of thing should work, can work. And since we've been around for more than 20 years, used by practitioners around the world, it does work. Not only that, we're doing independent research. We're doing research at universities to show the impact of our Infoceuticals at the cellular level, again, eliminating placebo and all of that. So we're working really hard to make sure that the theoretical science is there, the practical science is there, and that the results are there from as far as what practitioners are experiencing with their clients. So a lot of people intuitively know that, and they'll go in and they really don't need to know anything. They're just going to get these results. But as we talked about mindset, if you go in and you're like, there's no way this can work, You know what? It's not that it doesn't work. It's that you have reduced its potency right there because you've already set your mind against healing with this process. And the moment you can understand that science really does exist around all of this, that the theory is good, that the research is there, it lets you put those thoughts aside and lets you from your heart more invite the opportunity. Well, let me explore this. And so I think without getting into all of the science, I think helping people understand it's been used for decades. It's been explored from a research and theoretical standpoint for decades. And now, as we talked about earlier, conventional scientists are studying quantum biology and now understanding. I'll give you just one example. I think this research came out like 10 years ago, but they were looking at the process of smell. And the conventional thought for a long time has been this molecular lock and key mechanism. So this molecule enters the nose, the receptor gets it, and based on its shape, it's able to determine what that smell is. Well, what they have found is that there are different isotopes of the same molecule that have the same shape, but they have different vibrations. And people with sensitive sense of smell can actually tell a different smell between them, even though the shape is the same. So they're starting to learn just with smell, as an example, that vibration helps to determine smell. And once upon a time, we wouldn't have thought that. But now that we're exploring quantum biology, we are getting it. And another aspect of it is, well, something so small couldn't make a difference. So do you know a photon is like the smallest particle you can probably think about. I mean, it's smaller than an electron, and it's an exchange that happens between electrons. We never mind blowing people's minds for a second that particles might not exist anyway, but we'll call it a particle. A photon is a single particle of light, which is infinitesimally small. They have found now that the eye can detect a single photon, which that blows my mind. It tells you that something so small we can't fathom it has an effect at a level that we understand. So, as people start to grasp these things, I think they can let the mind go and start to invite healing into their lives and just try something that has worked for a lot of other people.
And I think because of technology now, we can see much more. Like, remember, we had no microscope. That's why we believed it was only organ. When we found the microscope, now we can see cells. And
yes,
now we go deep and deep, and who knows what we're going to find in 100 years. So.
I know. Every time they smash things together, they're finding smaller and smaller things. Like, some people believe that the longer we just go smashing things, the more we're just going to find there's no end to creation. There's just no end to it.
And everything is frequency, so it's all waves.
Well, that's really it, because what we have found when we talk about frequency at Energy for Life, we actually talk about it in a slightly different way than most people, because most people are literally thinking about a frequency like this, a wave that says, okay, the wave happened this many times in a second, therefore it's 60 hertz. When we're talking about frequencies, we're actually talking about, if you picture in a pond, dropping two rocks into a pond, and each one creates a set of ripples. But when those ripples start to interact with each other, all of a sudden you get this cool pattern in the water. That pattern is called an interference pattern. Well, when you bring the energies of lots of different atoms into a single molecule, that molecule is this extraordinary pattern of frequencies. It's not one frequency, it's a pattern of frequencies. And so the unique thing that Energy for Life does is it actually works based on this concept of energy patterns. So a liver cell and a retina cell, they have different patterns, but they're based on the same underlying, electrons, protons, very basic things. So sometimes certain patterns have a very close relationship to other patterns. So the reason I mentioned specifically the liver and the retina is because they actually have a lot of similarity to them. And that's why you find a special communication between them. And in Chinese medicine, those would both be on the liver meridian. We call that an integrator. Nobody needs to remember that term, but it's similar to the concept of a meridian. We say those two have a close communication with each other. So it's really fascinating when you get deeper into it. But again, for the sake of most people, they need to know, okay, somebody's thought this through. Somebody's figured out a way to use this in my biology to help. I'm going to go see Dr. Larisa and just make sure it helps me. She's figured this out.
Some people like science, so there is a lot of science that we can provide and available now online to go and be curious about it. And some people don't want to know science, they just want to know how it's going to help me. So
that's right.
Yeah, so there is a different possibility to explore this field. And speaking about the field, how do you see the future of healthcare evolving, especially with tools like bioenergetics becoming more accessible for people? Now we see many devices based on bioenergetic principles out there. What do you think about future of healthcare?
Well, I think what's happening is because, again, going back to x-rays and MRIs, we already use in medicine more and more in the way of frequencies. I've run across something that somebody's developing right now where they're literally using, I think it is sound frequencies in order to make incisions for surgeries. And because they are doing that, it's super easy to seal it back up and have it heal afterwards. And so already mainstream medicine is going to be using more and more in the way of frequencies, energies, light, magnetic fields. All those things are going to be used more and more in mainstream medicine. So really what we're doing with our approach is we're sort of pioneering, and I don't mean only Energy for Life. Anybody who's really been in this space really making progress is pioneering what absolutely is going to be used in modern medicine because it's already increasingly being used. And it comes about because of quantum biology. They're able to prove more of it, and simply technology is allowing this. You're also going to see more in the way of wearables and devices that are taking information from you, and AI. For those who aren't big fans of AI, it's just a pattern recognition software. It's going to take all this information about you and be able to personalize everything that's done for you more and more. So I think these different technologies are going to come together as medicine continues to evolve, because what it's going to do is it's going to personalize it. It's going to reduce side effects. It's going to allow us to work more precisely in one area. I mean, when you think about the fact that a laser can point at one thing and then make a difference in the body, you could target potentially, I'll just say cancer or something like that, and treat just that spot of the body instead of something that is systemic and challenging for the entire body. So I really think that, it's not the future. It is right now. We are doing some of it. Mainstream medicine is doing some of it. And the key difference is going to be that research. So anybody who's not in mainstream medicine, because they are all basing it on research, those who are in the sort of alternative health space, research is what's going to set them apart, because that's the only way things can go mainstream, really. It's the only way that medicine will embrace it. So the research we're doing right now, we believe will eventually carry it more and more into use by doctors, use by the medical system, whether or not you consider it medicine in the conventional sense, but you're going to see more and more of a merging of it. But those who simply have a device and say, hey, this works, trust us, that's not going to carry weight very much longer, because there's going to be too much research on things that are really working.
It's called evidence-based medicine.
Absolutely, yes. You said it, you wrapped it up in 2 seconds.
That's how they call mainstream medicine, evidence-based medicine.
Yes.
But we do have evidence, and we have a research as well. So yeah, it will go to mainstream in future. Yeah. If you could leave our listener with one message about reclaiming their energy and health, what would it be? I really do feel strongly about that heart set, mindset, gut set that we talked about.
We live in a very fast-paced society. We are moving a lot, traveling a lot, flying. That disrupts the field. We're eating poorly. We're doing so many things that disrupt the field, but a lot of it really does come down to we inside ourselves are not always very coherent, so to speak. We're very scattered. And I think the more we can, especially with the internet and the disconnect that a lot of that has caused, the more we can find coherence, the better it is for us, not only in our physical health, but in our purpose. It's easy to say, well, disconnect from the internet and connect with, your family, your loved ones, but not everybody's in a position where they have that sort of support. Sometimes going online and finding those who are coherent with you. I don't think distance matters. I do think we're at risk with our online world of being disconnected. But if we can find connections there, if somebody doesn't have maybe that household support, but they can go to someone like you and you have a coherent field because you're working on yourself, that immediately starts to trigger a healing response, right? It's not just what they put in their body, it's the things around them. It's the earth fields, it's other people's fields. So finding those who have a positive effect on you and being around them, developing that within yourself, choosing higher frequency foods, choosing bioenergetic remedies, doing all of the things that lift and balance the energy field. It's easily said, it's not as easily done. But, one of the things that I believe is that the deepest work is inside. But sometimes there's a lot of momentum. There's those traumas. There's those types of things that sometimes need that outside help, at least initially, at least for a time. That's where outside tools like bioenergetics, where being around supportive people, those things can help get you into a space where you're starting to heal. You're starting to have more energy. You're starting to have your own coherence to the point you can then take the next steps. So I think it's really about knowing that you want to find that coherence and then being open to the tools and the people that can help take you to that next level of it as you're working from the inside out as well.
I'm grateful that you say all this because we're creating a program that create a community that support also healing.
So important. Yes.
Sometimes it's overwhelming when you do your own work and when you have a support of other people, accountability, or even community of people who are doing the same work. It's already increased the energy, and it's like creating energy going outside, and energy comes from outside to you. I call it three different energy: internal energy that we talk about, meridians and chakras and mitochondria; external energy that comes from everywhere outside of you. You mentioned earth energy or sun. And also I call it relational energy, that human relationship, we are related to animals, to plants, to earth. So it's all kind of interconnected, and we need all of it to be healed or to be healthy, stay healthy.
I love that you say all this. It's an online community that you're developing, right?
People can check our website for our membership program, and it's like amazing when people do work together and it's supporting each other.
Well, then I'm glad I said what I did about connecting with people online. And I didn't even think about us going to that topic, but I really feel that's true. I mean, we can watch a TV show and it's playing beautiful music and it can strike beautiful emotions in us, or the idea that is being presented there is beautiful, and it can shift us, right? So it doesn't have to be a physical person near you. That has a powerful effect, but people can share resonance at a distance, and a community where they're encouraging your right activities in your own life, but they're also just inspiring, uplifting, guiding, being guided, because part of that is you bring your own best, not you, Dr. Larisa, but let's say I'm a member of your community. If I were to come in as a member of your community, I have an opportunity to share my best with others, even as I'm receiving from them. And one of the best ways we learn is teaching. Yes, when people come together like that and they're all giving their best, they're also becoming their best. So I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and energy exchange is always beautiful things. happen, right? Creativity
Yes.
happen in the community when you exchange the energy. A few more things that I want to ask you. So you publish a book along with Harry Messier. Can you tell people what they find in that book if they want to get the book?
Absolutely. So the book is called Restore Your Energy with Bioenergetics. We sort of open up the book with Harry's background story as far as how did he get into this in the first place. And he had an incredible journey. As you know, he was 7 years bedridden with chronic fatigue before he discovered bioenergetics. Now he's back to parasailing and whatever he does is he does, but he's a very active fella. And then we take a brief look at sort of some of the challenges with conventional thinking because there are many. You know, when you think, well, some of this is not real, modern medicine is real. Once you start exploring modern medicine, and by the way, nothing against the miracles of modern medicine also, but when you think that, oh, they've got all the research behind them and everything, you might not realize there's a lot of fraud, a lot of cherry picking, a lot of whatever in the studies that go into medicine. So it's not this black and white, oh, you know, medicine's got it. No, they're figuring it out and there's a lot of money. And when there's a lot of money, there's always, you know, room for half truths. We explored a little bit about that, but then it's really to position people to think, hey, now what we need to do is we need to explore the other side of things, what we talked about earlier, which is, you know, it's fine to provide nutrition, it's fine to use medicine where needed, but there's this whole other side. And we start to explore that. And I think there's kind of two things that we talked about earlier. The body needs energy and it needs to know what to do with that energy because that guides all the chemical activity of the body. So that's really the main thrust of the book is how do we go about building the body's battery, so to speak? And that's why we kind of showed a battery on the front, right? How do you build that energy up? And we go through a lot of different techniques for doing that, grounding, getting sunlight, exercise, and we show a lot of the research around this as well. And then we really enter into the body field theory. But what I think is useful, because you mentioned specifically, some people do want to dive a little bit deeper. This book is not like reading deep, dark white papers on the internet of 40 pages long of just dense science that's going to bore you to tears. We tried to really distill the science of fields and how they operate in the body down to something that is enough to know without getting crazy. Now, we do have crazier books that people can dive into, but this is like an introduction to the science around the things that we've talked about. So when people are wanting to understand this concept a little bit better, and then how the scanning technology works, how the Infoceuticals work, all of that's sort of built into this book. There's a lot of good research with sources that people can look into if they're wondering. That sort of thing. But we designed it as an easy read for people.
So great. Last question. Our podcast name, Harmonic Alignment. What does it mean, harmonic alignment, specifically for you? How would you describe that?
So coherence for me is alignment. When you have one frequency like this and another that's going the wrong way, there's a clashing of frequencies. That's not alignment. So what you want are frequencies that are working together. But when you talk about harmonic alignment, for me, you know, harmony in music means different notes working well together. And so for me, that's exactly what you talked about with this group, for instance. So it could be a single practitioner and a single client. It could be any two people, but definitely when you have a group, you have a whole chorus, right? Everyone's singing a different note, but they're working beautifully together if they are in coherence. So for me, you know, we really just talked about that whole concept. I love that that's the name because that's what it means for me, is it means lots of people coming together, not only people, all the frequencies of our food, the things we're surrounded with in our lives, everything has a frequency. And when you are gathered together with others of like frequency and foods of high frequency and all these different things, there you have that harmonic alignment.
From my perspective, I see it's like a holistic approach to health, harmonic alignment, when you incorporate everything, all layers of health, and that's become coherent or in harmonic alignment. Yeah.
Love it. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Steve, for your time, for your wisdom, and thank you for coming to our show. Maybe see you next time.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you ready for your Energy for Life bioenergetic nest scan? Dr. Larisa Sharapova and myself, Priscilla Koblenz, offer personal, private, 90-minute consults to get you back to optimal health and well-being. And starting in the new year, we're offering an Energy Mastery Program, a monthly membership, which will give you access to a monthly scan as well as 2 group masterclasses to help you optimize your wellness in the new year. For more details, visit the show notes or check out harmonicalignment.co. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Harmonic Alignment. If something resonated with you, we would love to hear about it. Please consider leaving us a 5-star review and subscribing so you don't miss an upcoming episode. Thank you. The information contained in this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider. Carefully read all labels and directions. The products and information received through the podcast should not be used to replace a consultation or advice from your healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or have any healthcare questions, please promptly call your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Dr. Larisa Sharapova and Priscilla Koblenz, and the producers are not responsible for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained in this podcast. This podcast may contain endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct financial benefit to the product or services referenced.